It's 6 o'clock.
Oh, you're the chief.
I'm the chief tonight.
All right.
Welcome, everybody, and I am officially opening this at 6 o'clock on, Wednesday, August 7th, and calling to order this regular meeting of the Truckee-Donna Public Utility District. Can we get roll call, please?
Director Aguera?
Yes, here.
Director Harris?
Here.
Director Laliotis?
Here.
Two
Vice
words
President
up
Finn?
Here.
Record will state President Bender is absent.
Very good, thank you. As you are willing and able, please join us for the pledge. Director Harris, would you like to lead us tonight? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Brian, are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
There are no changes this evening.
Very good, thank you. And we have moved right on to public comment. So this is time that is set aside for the public to address the board on any matter not on the agenda. Testimony related to any agendized item should be addressed at the time that that item is considered. Do we have any public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to director updates. Directors, do you have any comments and updates?
You know me, I always like to start out, to thank all the employees, the crews, the admin staff, management for all the work that you do and the service you provide around here. I know there were a couple of emergency call-outs and outages along the way, but we do appreciate the efforts that you've made to keep the lights on and keep the water flowing. The other thing is that I have seen over the past week or so a bunch of photos from the family day that they had here, and that was kind of fun to, all the kids that went to it. We had one of our employees went as a friend of one of the children, and they just looked like they had a great time. And I think it's also an awesome way to get the kids interested in water or electric, and potentially maybe have a future employee there in that group. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Harris. Director Laliotis? No updates this week? Ditto, I know. She covers a lot of territory for us.
I guess I've
Director
been there
Aguera?
in days. There's no update for me. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I was just echo everything that Director Harris said. Also, I hope everybody is getting their fair share of inspiration and humility from watching the Olympics. And the lesson that I bring forward from that is about sort of not sabotaging yourself, like making sure that you just continue moving forward even if you don't think you're going to be successful. It's an Olympic dream, but you can get there. And on that note, I just wanted to share some good news that relates to what we do here. One is that a research team from South Wales in Australia has developed a system that is 99% efficiency on solar panel recycling. So I know this is a topic that we have discussed here when we think about our resource mix. Then one of the cons of solar is, what are we going to do with all those solar panels as they age out of their useful life? Well, we're going to recycle 99% of them. So that's really good news. It keeps us, the system that they've come up with is efficient, economically viable, and scalable. So that's very good news for us with our circular economy focus. And also another research team, science is amazing, from the University of Birmingham in England is studying trees and the role that bark plays in methane sequestration. So not only do we have, our green trees, and they, of course, photosynthesize and suck out carbon, well, the bark also does an amazing job sucking out methane, and this is something we did not know before. This is new science, and it really adds urgency and validation to our we are doing these things, reforestation and watershed restoration and all of our ecological tools that are super helpful to us, restoring our environment and some balance to our world. So all that came from the Olympics. Thank you. And that is my director comment. So moving on to department updates.
All right, this evening we'll begin with the Water Department updates. We have Neil Kaufman, one of our engineers here, if we have any questions about the capital projects over the summer, but I'll start off with some utility performance metrics. Our Water Utilities Director, Chad's out on a personal leave to be a steward and camp host for the Boy Scouts, so we like the fact that he's out, work-life balance, working with all the young folks out there, getting him out in the woods and exposed to nature. I'll stand in for him a little bit on doing some of the utility metrics. This is a graphic that we show on a monthly basis, kind of doing a year-over-year comparison of water production here in our service territory. The red bars there being this year, the darker blue being last year, and then the checkered blue being the 3-year average. So we are producing at a higher level than we were last year, or a higher output than we were last year, but still under the 3-year average. Last year was a little bit unique in terms of a lot of moisture. It stayed cool later into the year. Obviously, this year we're well into the heat of the season, and so outdoor irrigation tends to be our major contributor to overall water production increases. And so that red bar graphic really illustrates that starting in May, we really started to see folks out there watering their lawns or other outdoor irrigation. This is an image of our ski run tank construction project. Neil mentioned it his last board meeting in terms of our capital project updates. There's a photo. Some of you saw the finished product of the 6170, the new tank, which we plan to kind of unveil and have a ribbon cutting with here in the coming weeks, that putting that tank into service. Well, this is another tank that we've invested in a replacement, and kind of an image of how it all starts, the foundation. We don't usually see that. We see the big metal tank out there full of water and everything painted and finished. Well, this is how that project starts. The previously mentioned 6170 tank, some imagery of the internal tank structures. Something that very few people ever get to see is the inside of a tank without water in it. If it's out of water and it's not under construction, we have a problem. But this one here in particular is, I think they've filled the tank and done some back T testing on it. Is that true, Neil?
Yes, so we have taken the bacteria testing. Right now, I believe we're waiting for the results of the VOC testing, volatile organic compounds, which we have to do because of the paints. And when those come back clean, it'll pretty much be ready to go into service. We have been working with it. I know we actually just did a test overflow, believe it or not, to ensure that the discharge and overflow piping is functioning properly.
Thank you for that update. The interior imagery here, you can see that this is one of our more recent tank projects that incorporates up-to-date and up-to-standard seismic construction standards. Also, some of the new, as Neil mentioned, the new coating standards through AWWA construction standards. So this is a modern tank, about 2.5 million gallons of additional storage that we can use as a kind of a overall storage of our water distribution system. A couple of updates that Neil has mentioned and kept us up to speed on the pipeline replacement project. Neil, do you have any updates?
Yes, so the ski slope project is essentially finished. All of the customers are connected to the new pipe. The new pipe has been, or the old pipe, excuse me, has been abandoned. Contractor's been going through, working on cleanup. And we're going to probably do a final punch list inspection here within the next couple of days. The town of Truckee will be doing a pavement overlay on that chunk of ski slope within the next week or two. So we are just getting right in front of them. On Northwoods Boulevard, over by Slalom and Fjord, the work over there has been completed. The road's been repaved. Contractor has a little bit of cleanup work to do over in that segment. That'll probably happen, I'm guessing, Friday of this week. And we have started trenching and pipe installation on the other side of Northwoods over by Swiss and Ramshorn. And we'll be over there probably into late September would be my expectation.
Thank you. These other two items will probably take off the updates in the next board meeting, but the EPA revised lead and copper rule, staff continues to be, to work towards compliance and updating our inventories for lead and copper rule standards for inspection. And then also the master metering project that we have been working on for many years, and it's kind of a work in progress to ensure that we have more valid data in our distribution system water audits. And so this project includes installing meters, not just at our customers' point of connection, but throughout our distribution system and at key zone breaks so that we can more accurately measure and identify where water may be lost through leaks or our residential meters don't match up with production meter data. So it's part of the water audit system. It's called data validity, and this master metering project is really helpful. And once we're done with it, we expect our water audits to have a much higher validity score with the state board. Also wanted to add one other water update just for public awareness and the board's awareness. We've had a few calls. There is a leak over on 89 North and Rainbow going into the Prosser Lakeview area. We're aware of the leak. It's a project that we're currently strategizing on how to make that repair. It includes a water main that goes under the highway, so we have to coordinate with Caltrans. That's a Caltrans managed highway, state highway. And it also includes some relatively deep buried and water main that's through encasements. So we're strategizing on how to maintain it. We're monitoring it. We plan to bring an update to the board and a timeline for repair of that leak. But just for kind of public consumption, we're aware of it and we're working on it. Thank you, Neil. Next, we have electric utility updates.
Good evening, Vice President Finn, members of the board. I'm Jared Carpenter, Electric Utility Director. So for tonight, since we kind of met recently, there aren't a ton of things to talk about. When we first wrote this, there were no significant outages, but then over the weekend, that lightning strike over in the Morris Valley 1 circuit did take out about 100 customers for a number of hours. Pretty violent strikes over there, as I'm sure everyone knows, of lightning. But we had it back on in a couple hours. So I want to take a very quick moment just to share a slide and say, random fun fact, there's over 300 solar projects in town. And I'm not sure if we ever shared this before, but they're all mapped out by those red dots. So just kind of sharing the information. Next slide, please. For our power updates, this is just for June 2024. You can kind of get an idea of where things are. We're still mostly non-carbon emitting sources, wind being quite large, undisclosed or undefined, or you want to call it, that's just where we're buying markets and whatnot. One thing that changed from last month, when I was showing these briefly, was the gas was 9% then, and it's 11% this past month. Mostly that's because the solar kind of derated. Solar doesn't like really hot weather, so it was warm, obviously. So a little change there, but the idea of where we were. Next slide, please. And then for kind of a random project update, this is the West River Street. I'm sure everyone sees it, just driving down there. Our team has been installing mostly undergrounding through there, and mostly doing it at night when they're doing their other work there to not disrupt the power flow and also decrease outages. Neat picture, if you kind of look at the one to the left, the fun thing there is you don't see a pole. And on the right, there's the pole. It's because they had to go in there and hold the cross arm up with the power with the feeders on there, and then kind of slide the pole in afterwards. Just kind of pointing out, it's a pretty complicated one, and the guys have a lot of fun building this one, but it certainly isn't easy. And I think that's my last slide.
Thank you, Jared. Next, we have human resources.
Good evening, Vice President Finn and members of the board. I'm Jillian Stewart, HR and Risk Director. This month's Core Value Award winners, the first one is TJ Dwyer, our Water Operations Leadman. No picture of him yet, so that's his certificate up there. We'll get a picture with him for the newsletter. But the Water Department recently went through an in-depth, hands-on confined space training that unfortunately TJ was unable to attend. However, TJ took it upon himself to get caught up on what was reviewed during the training and then followed up with our risk and compliance specialists to ensure he was following the policy correctly, and then shared his plans for carrying the process forward with his crew. TJ's proactiveness and follow-through on the training and policy are great examples of accountability to his position, crew, himself, and the district. So well done, TJ. Forrest Heston won this month. He's a journeyman lineman for safety. The district safety committee, which Forrest is a part of, has recently been revamped to give its members a more active role. Forrest took this new approach head-on by being a safety champion for the district's participation in the 4th of July parade. Forrest attended planning meetings for the parade to share lessons learned from last year's parade and other safety reminders and recommendations. The feedback from everyone at those meetings was that his input was incredibly valuable and appreciated. So thank you, Forrest. Next up, we wanted to recap our district/family day. So on August 1st, we held our 3rd annual district day. A district day is a staff development day designed to be like our own internal conference. Every year it has its own kind of theme or different approach. This year, at staff's request, we incorporated families into the second half of our district day. So the first part of the day is what we have up here on the screen currently. It started with a presentation from Julie and Ryan out of South Lake PUD, who came to share about their experience and lessons learned from both the emergency management perspective and as a water utility during the Caldor fire. This was a very engaging and interactive presentation with tons of questions from our staff. At the end, we probably could have kept going if we would have had more time. And it really helped to bring to life for our staff, the recently adopted emergency operations plan. And the next photo over is a group photo. We just took the opportunity to get us all in our cool new Charging Forward shirts. Next slide. So next up was the Family Day. Family Day consisted of a variety of activities and opportunities for family members of all ages to get to know all aspects of the PUD. One option, which is up here on the screen right now, was to participate in our Amazing Race, as we called it. So it kind of incorporated elements of the TV show, The Amazing Race, with kind of escape room, if you've ever done that. It had kind of a blend of those challenges. And the premise was that each group was a PUD employee assisting with a water leak that ended up breaking a PUD laptop. So during their shift, it consisted of 6 time challenges as they worked through their day. So the challenges incorporated everything from getting on the radio and taking the customer service call about the outage, doing a social media post, creating the work order for the broken laptop, going to the warehouse and actually getting the supplies for the laptop, building the laptop, and then completing a public records request at the end. Along the way, you also had to kind of be aware of your surroundings and make sure you got all your PPE, and we're wearing that for the end of the shift. And we incorporated our core values as kind of clues along the way. You also had to make sure you're paying attention because all the challenges were related, so one challenge might have a clue for the next station. And then we announced our winners at the end of the day. It was based on timed for each challenge and then how many of the PPEs and the core value kind of clues that you got. Then next slide. These were the other stations that we had here. We had the favorite ice cream aquifer, where Chad explains how aquifer works, and then kids get to come through and use ice cream and Oreos and granola and Sprite and gummy worms in the soil and everything, and then get really excited on sugar for their parents for the rest of the day. And then in electric, we had a learner burn presentation, pole climbing demonstrations, bucket rides for all family members, and then to run off some of that energy and sugar that we gave the kids, the conservation garden just turned into kind of the fun zone. Next slide. Here's a couple more pictures, and then we ended the day actually with a barbecue at West End Beach hosted by the executive team, where families were invited to join us there as well. And that's it.
I wanted to add, this it was a great event, and congratulations to Jillian and the department heads and staff that put this together. It was really the first time we've done a family day here at the district, and it was an opportunity for the kids to see what their parents do on a daily basis, but also some problem solving, some engagement, some fun. It was a great event and something we hope to continue in the future years. Next up, communications and strategic affairs. Also, we wanted to add one other thing for, potentially for our other public agency partners out there. Jillian mentioned Julie from South Tahoe PUD. Really, really an informative presentation. She's one of the staff engineers over there in South Lake, and their insights and not just the successes, but lessons learned through the couple of fire events they've had over the last several years. And from a water utility perspective and from a wastewater utility perspective, Jillian mentioned the timing that we did our emergency operations plan, but we're also beginning the process of training our staff in NIMS and SIMS incident command structure, architecture, communications, enhancing some of our practices and policies. And to have another utility come in, and a representative like Julie to come and give us some lessons learned is invaluable in terms of how we set up our planning strategies. Also, just had a area managers meeting earlier with our North Lake utility partners, and that topic came up again. So that the communication between utilities and lessons learned and kind of ways to move forward and joint partnerships and mutual aid agreements is really important. So I want to thank South Tahoe PUD for joining us, and we hope we can reciprocate in some form or fashion there.
All right. Good evening, Vice President Finn, members of the board. We had a busy month. We hosted one of 4 stops on NCPA's legislative staff tour. This is where NCPA, Northern California Power Agency, takes 40 legislative staffers on a bus. About 30 of them were from Sacramento, and they had almost 10 from Washington, D.C. this time, representing key legislative representatives in the Assembly and the Senate, and then key committees and consultants, in energy and water policy, energy in this case. And that tour was 3 days. It included stops in Lodi, talking hydrogen, conversion of a natural gas plant, trip to Redding, trip to Plymouth Sierra and Portola, visit here in Truckee, and then a trip to Roseville on the way out. So they got a little flavor of Northern California's public power. This is them in the boardroom. We did a panel. The general manager facilitated it. Myself and the electric utility director were on the panel, and the town manager also participated as a key account and collaborator. Took them out in the yard and showed them some big trucks, and that's all about the CARB Advanced Clean Fleets rule and the challenges we face there. Next slide. Took them into the field to see some, that's a hazard tree in the background there. It's dead, and it's near some power lines. And had them walk just 100 yards down a dirt road, but they were shocked to see giant trucks at the end of it, and the fact that we do this work and what it looks like. And thank you to Ryan, who will be part of a later presentation. He also gives a great tour. Electric utility staff across the board was super helpful, so appreciate that. And so anyway, great event, really educational, and opportunity to build relationships with the key people in Sacramento and DC and the people who make decisions. So next stuff. We've done a lot of communication this summer. Wildfire remains in the front, and our wildfire season, everyone knows, is off to a bang. A hot start, no pun intended. And so we're pushing and continue to push that. And we did sign, the board did authorize the memorandum of understanding with Truckee Rec and Park District for a community resource center, an outage center we're calling it, at the Community Arts Center in downtown. And so we're executing on that. We also launched our time of use electric rate that the board's seen and approved as well. And it's out, it's on the street. I think the customer email hit today. We're still working on the press release, but it's an opt-in, so optional rate for residential customers, and it offers a discounted rate between every hour but 4 and 9 p.m., which is off-peak, when our electricity is less expensive and it tends to be greener. But it charges a premium for power that's used between 4 and 9 p.m. every day. And so for people who have the opportunity to shift their load, change their behavior, use technology to help, it can be a great way to save money and achieve environmental goals. So very happy to see that out on the street. Go ahead. And then we are doing, just to let the board know, we are putting outage recaps on the outage map. One of the things people ask is, why did things happen? They tend to forget the question pretty quick when the power comes on, but, we know. And so once the information's out, we are, in addition to our active communications, and of course, customers get automated alerts out of their account for their meter. If they sign up, we're also sharing the information since people want to know. So that, and it's Your Money at Work campaign with all the capital projects and all the maintenance and operations that's going on. So that's the update.
Thank you, Steve.
Good evening, Vice President Finn and directors of the board. I wanted to quickly update everyone on what is considered now the outage that happened on July 19th, which was the largest IT outage ever. This was due to a company called CrowdStrike, which is a cybersecurity company. Although it wasn't due to any criminal activity, it was based on a faulty file that, when it got updated, it caused systems to not boot properly. Although the district was unaffected by that outage, our third-party off-hours customer service center was affected for a couple hours before business hours. Staff offered assistance to agencies that were affected. And then on the topic of cybersecurity, I wanted to quickly go over a couple of stats that I found on a couple of industry reports that were interesting, that I thought was interesting to the district. And I'm not going to cover all these, but real quickly, in 2023, cybercrime cost $8 trillion, with a report of it increasing annually every year 15%. So if it was measured as a country, then cybercrime would be the third largest economy after U.S. and China. And then so the two reports were Cybersecurity Ventures report and then the Microsoft Digital Defense report. And so Microsoft being one of the, if not the largest provider of on-premise and cloud-based computing and applications and services to the government computing space, they provide this security report, and it's based on over 65 trillion signals per day that they synthesize. So a couple of interesting points out of that were, specifically for us, what is called operational technology, or OT. These networks and industrial control system devices are frequently left unpatched. And that's due because it's challenging for organizations to patch those because of disruptions of operations. Additionally, these OT devices, they lack patches for vulnerabilities, and it's often due because of discontinued support. And it's revealed in the report that 78% of these devices on customers' networks have known vulnerabilities that threat actors can exploit, and 46% of these devices cannot be patched. Let's see, next slide. An industry-wide basic strategy around security is not using the same password on different systems, and yet in the Microsoft security report, they state that in the month of June of 2023 alone, they detected 158 million instances of password reuse across their service sites. And then lastly, in the Cybersecurity Ventures report, they report a 35% increase in the demand for cybersecurity experts over the past year. And they project that the demand for cybersecurity jobs will reach 3.5 million in 2025, which is a 350% increase over 8 years. What this means is that it's not only the current demand for cybersecurity professionals is being grossly unmet, but the divide of cybersecurity haves and have-nots continues to grow. So That's all I have.
And that's it for our updates this evening.
All right.
Great, thank you for that cheerful ending. But the information is always appreciated. I really enjoy those updates. Thank you. We're moving on to the consent calendar. Do we have any public comment on the consent calendar? Nope. Okay, seeing
Hey,
none.
Krista,
Yeah,
what is this public hearing here?
I think that's a mistake. We don't have a public hearing this evening.
problem.
It's just, okay, yeah, it's just there is no public hearing. Do we have any director questions or comments about the consent calendar? Me neither. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Great. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Guerra,
Yes.
Director Harris.
Yes.
Director Laliotis.
Yes.
Vice President Finn.
Yes.
The record will note, President Benders absent.
Thank you. And that brings us to our first workshop item of the evening. Item number 12, the new Truckee Library project updates with Friends of the Library. So the floor is yours. Friends.
Wanted to kind of set the table here a little bit. We have Derek here this evening representing JKA Architecture Engineering. We have representatives of our partners, Friends of the Library, that we've worked with for the last couple of years. I believe we have a representative from the Rec and Park District. Happy to offer any opportunities for questions and feedback from all of our partners. But this evening, the goal is, as you all recall, we've been working over the last year or so with a partnership project in establishing the most favorable location for the new regional Truckee Library project. And so there are several parcel owners within the regional park area along Brockway, the district being one of them. And so last year, we worked with Friends of the Library, Rec and Park District, Truckee Sanitary District, Town of Truckee, and ourselves to engage in a project to adjust lot lines, do a lot line adjustment. There was some cleaning up to do. The parcels in that regional park area had a lot of unique kind of flag lots or kind of obscure shaped parcels that really didn't lend itself for future development or project management. And it kind of created a scenario where there was overlying infrastructure across parcel lines that perhaps would cause challenges in the future. And so it was well worth it for the district to partner with each of the agencies to kind of realign a lot of those parcels so that they're easier to manage. And the co-benefit was it created an opportunity to, several manageable parcels that were the byproduct of this that could potentially be a site for the new regional library project. And so you're all aware of that. I just kind of want to recap with that. The next phases in that project, the JPA with the library has engaged with JK Architecture and Engineering for kind of a design and engineering phase of the project. And there was an opportunity this evening to provide some updates for our board that may contribute or inform future decisions on the parcels that the district owns. So with that, I want to hand it over to Derek and offer the opportunity for the Friends of the Library, the JPA, Rec and Park, whomever that might have some contributing information that has value, or if there's questions, provide that opportunity as well. This is a workshop. There's no action coming out of this item, so I kind of a little bit more loose with the participation and the discussion. With that, I'll hand it over to Derek.
Thanks, Brian. Good evening, everyone. Once again, Derek Holbrecht with JKAE. Glad to be here on behalf of the JPA and our friends at the library. Kind of start to transition through. Only got a handful of slides, but yeah, want to keep it conversational. So we came on board earlier this year and excited to help move the project forward. And one of the things that we first started with was really want to understand the prior planning and the efforts that were done to date. And in that effort, there was planning done back in 2021 that really established the viability of the library being in the park. And as part of that one, we came in with a fresh set of eyes and started to think about some of the opportunities that exist, as well as started to see some of the challenges. And some of the challenges that we started to see with this site location, and we all know that every site development has challenges, right? And every challenge can be solved, but really looking from a stewardship standpoint to make sure that we've got the right location from a standpoint of the viability of the library. And a few of the things that we started to see in this initial site discussion impact to the access road and entry into the park, impact of the operations of the park from a standpoint of its parking, and really concerned about the viability of all the activities that happen currently now in the park, and knowing that we're the potential of another public facility, and how we can help to support that from a community perspective. Looking at existing cell tower that you may all be familiar with that's out there, that would need to be relocated as part of the project, as well as the rec department M&O yard and its operations. So there started to be a few kind of red flags that started to come up and said, well, let's maybe just pause, and we're kind of new here, so let's understand where you've been through. And next slide, Brian. And we said, let's take a fresh perspective and say, okay, what are the library's vision and goals for this project? And really the key item that continues to come back to is the importance of the integration of the library into the park. More so than just citing it within the park, but really thinking about what libraries are and those opportunities of the user experiences of the and pedestrian experience, indoor-outdoor connections, ability of just the library in itself and its identity and its wayfinding. And obviously the environmental site development is really an important aspect. And when we thought about that, we said we have to make sure that everything that we do in the consideration of this library also allows those same attributes to be considered relative to the existing operations of the rec center, or of the rec park. So we kind of started to say, okay, now we got a little bit of framework to kind of just come back and just say, do we have the best solution moving forward based on the prior planning? Next slide. And it really afforded us an opportunity to kind of take a little step back. And good timing, Sven. Sorry. Welcome. To really analyze and really say, okay, we know that there's some site considerations and some of those challenges that we exist, but what really are the priorities of the site that we need to consider? And we looked at two options. Option A effectively is where the prior study had been done that looks at a viable option for the library to kind of reside in that location. And those challenges that we identified are challenges that could be solved. But we said, is there a more simpler opportunity to think about a better location for the library that doesn't have as much constraints, doesn't have as much impact, and still affords the ability to fulfill the needs of the library, as well as minimizing the disruption of the park. So site option A, once again, is currently owned by the rec district. Site option B is owned by the PUD, leased to the rec district. So we kind of took that step back and said, okay, let's look at that. So the reason why we're here today, the next slide, is we went through and studied both options, and ultimately our project steering committee came to the recommendation that says there are a lot of positive aspects to the PUD property that the library could be a phenomenal consideration for. And we said, okay, let's kind of keep those conversations moving forward, and most importantly, come and talk with our partners. Because once again, we recognize that you're in a long-term lease with the rec district. And is there an opportunity to think about the multitude of properties that exist to help support the broader goals, vision and goals of the community? So where we've landed in this effort is really a consideration, and a consideration for this board to think about the ability to lease to the JPA this consideration location for the library. And what it does is it allows all of the wonderful things that are happening within the rec district to continue to happen, and start to consider the notion of a library coming into the park on this piece of property that starts to expand the services and the community offerings without having, once again, an impact to either the library or the rec district, but coming together as more community organizations and program opportunities that help to enrich the experience for the community. And I think maybe with that, I don't know if our friends of the library want to share any thoughts or reactions to this discussion.
Thanks. Thank you, Derek. Hello, Krista, Finn,
Hello, Gabby.
and fellow board members. fellow board members. I sound like I'm on the board right now. One of the things first of all, we'd like to thank you, as we have in the past, for all of your support on this project. And I have to add, that's the support of the Recreation and Park District. It's also the support of the Truckee Sanitary District, Nevada County, Town of Truckee. Collaboration is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I get great joy out of the great strides we can make when we collaborate and really work together. And that's what's been happening here. Derek mentioned briefly the core management team, which has been meeting every 2 weeks with the JKAE, and Group 4, we have a library consultant architect as well, who is really advising us on what works well for libraries as far as library design goes. And some of the benefits of this, we were trying to fit a size 10 foot into a size 4 shoe. Is the best way I can describe it, as it turns out. Thanks to JKAE for really pointing this out. It not only was an issue as far as the challenges for the library, but we discovered how huge an issue it was. I don't want to speak for the Rec and Park District, but how huge an issue it was for the Rec and Park District as well. By moving, so we went through several iterations of this. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many times we worked through multiple options. You see the final 2, but multiple options in order to get to these. One of the things was parking. We were going to have a library that was surrounded by asphalt in order to accommodate parking. It was still going to require some kind of parking in order to accommodate normal operations for the Recreation and Park District on the PUD property. It was going to be very disruptive, probably 3 to 4 phases of operations to do the construction over time. Whereas here, the whole thing can be constructed independent. Nothing is affecting the operations of the Recreation and Park District at all. So it wasn't hard. It was a very thorough look at all the options on the part of every member of that team, Rec and Park District, Town of Truckee, Nevada County, Friends of the Truckee Library, coming up with this option. So we think it's fabulous. Fabulous for the library, fabulous for the Recreation and Park District and all their operations and services they provide. And we hope you think it's equally fabulous for you. So that's what I have to say. And by all means, any questions you have, either for myself, for Sven. Hi, Mark. Good to see you here. I didn't see you at first. Please ask away.
So I kind of want to help frame this. This is a workshop item, just informational. As you saw well, let me step back one. You see the image up here on the slide right now. The parcel that's delineated in the red dotted line to the right, on the far right side of the screen, that's the product of the lot line adjustments of the parcel owned by the Rec and Park District. The parcel to the left is the product of the lot line adjustments that ended up with the district-owned parcel, still under the lease to Rec and Park. So one of the items that, kind of housekeeping items that we as a district and the Rec and Park District need to finalize is making the revisions, amendments to our current lease to reflect the parcel lot line changes and things of that nature. What there's an opportunity also is to examine the current lease to accommodate the library project that had option A, as Derek and Kathleen have mentioned. Option A was to keep it on the parcel fully owned by the Rec and Park District. The new option that was developed, option B, is to place it on the parcel owned by the PUD, which would require some lease term adjustments. Earlier this evening, there was a consent item to appoint the general manager as the negotiator for the lease of that real property. We also have a closed session item this evening regarding this parcel and the other parcels that were affected by the overlying lease to Rec and Park District. So no action with this item, an opportunity to ask questions. We have the experts in the room that have been part of that entire project. And so this is to inform future decisions or consideration. And as we said, happy to answer any questions.
Wow. That's cool, I think. Do we have any, opening it up for board discussion, any questions or comments?
I just have to say, I am with Kathleen that I like to see the collaboration between all the different agencies and public, the public groups, and to try to get our dinky little library into something that's doable. So if in my power, my remaining time on the board, I am in 100% support of trying to make this happen, because it sounds like it is a better location for everybody. And I know how popular the fields are and that park is, and, my husband's over there playing softball right now. But I think adding the library in that area is a great idea. And if great minds kind of come together, I'm always in support of the leadership that we have in Truckee to make this happen.
Thank you, Director Harris.
Similar to what Kim just had to say, but I also want to thank the team, Friends of the Library team. I know it's often hard once you go down a road and you see a vision and you're all locked in, and all of a sudden to have to step back and go, when you've done so much work to kind of facilitate the original plan, and to take a step back and go, and really do a deep dive. So I applaud you guys for, doing a sort of a strengths and weaknesses analysis on the project, because it was awesome, and I think it can be more awesome in the new location. And you guys have certainly addressed, things that would be impacted, but not problems, solvable problems, and solvable impacts, but impacts nonetheless. So I really applaud you guys for at this juncture taking a step back and really doing a deep dive and really analyzing as deep as you could to make sure that where this project is going is the right place. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Director Laliotis.
Okay. How we doing?
Do you have any comments, Director Aguirre?
Well, it's in good hands, I can see that.
Yes, it is.
I've known Kathy for a long time, too. Haven't met you, Garrett, or you also. But about how long are we into this project? When can we see the daylight on building? Or do we have any idea? Are we that far ahead yet?
Keep writing checks, Joe.
If you have a spare $5 million, they'll take
Favorable
it.
lease terms.
I wish I could.
I think that's a loaded question as far as how long into this project are we? I think we're about 15, 20, it depends on who you ask, years. But how long out to build? Our aim is to break ground in 2027. That is an aggressive timeline. And so this discussion tonight and being able to, as Director Laliotis mentioned, step back and figure out the best way forward is really important, that we take that big step back without compromising the opportunities that we have for the timeline to move it forward. So our goal is 2027, breaking ground.
Okay, good. I think that's enough for now, because they have all the information.
They do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Aguirre. I had a quick question about all the lot line adjustments that we did. Did they created that nice kind of square on the right? Did they also create that nice kind of not square, whatever that shape is, on the left? Like, did it, I don't want to say accidentally, but fortuitously create that other adjacent and congruent
I think there is a
shape?
coincidence to that one.
Okay.
And we weren't a part of that lot line adjustment. We kind of came on part of it, but I think that was an observation that Sven said was, all of a sudden, when we started to clear up the mess that we had, we
And we saw
started to
this
see some
beautiful shape.
opportunities. And we may not have seen that opportunity before.
Yeah, had we not
So, yeah.
done that exercise.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was hoping
Yeah.
to hear, because that's always really cool when that happens.
Exactly.
And you're in the weeds, and you're hacking through, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, look at that. I can just go right
Vice
around
President
here.
Finn, that was one of the intentions of the original parcel lot line adjustment project, was
Just to clean it
to
up.
clean up some of the just real obscure and kind of
Yeah,
hard to
there's a
explain
little
parcel
piece
lot
here,
lines.
Piece there, and instead we put them all together, and we got a nice big piece in the middle of the disc golf course, but that'll be awesome. Yeah, I agree with Director Laliotis. It's hard to change your mindset, the sunk cost fallacy, and like, we've done all this work for this one thing, but you know what? There's a better answer, and I applaud the courage to make those sorts of decisions. And it really does work out. That's why they call it a fallacy. It's not a real thing. So, great, thank you for sharing this information with us. I'm excited for doing what we can do to help this project go full bore ahead. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Friends of the Library, the JPA, Derek and JK, Sven with Rec and Park for keeping us posted and part of this process along the way and really giving us a thorough explanation of the challenges and the proposed solutions for those. So as Director Liotta said, it was always about what's the most beneficial path forward, and it's been a pleasure to work with the entire group. So thank you.
Brian, I have a question I just thought of. You, on our consent agenda tonight, you were working on some lease lines. Isn't that part of the property that you were working on?
Yes, so we're kind of jointly working on finalizing the lot line adjustments in terms of the lease, the overlying lease of that property. Also working in partnership with the Friends of the Library and the JPA on the library project. And then the consent item was to appoint me as the negotiator of those lease terms on behalf of the district.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Yep.
Very good. Well, thank you, everybody, for that informative presentation, which brings us to item number 13, another workshop item. And we have Mike Salmon to present for us our mid-year financial update.
Hey, we cleared the room.
We cleared the room.
It's financial, you know I want to be here.
You're welcome to stay. Sheesh, they always say that and then they leave.
All right, good evening, Vice President Finn and members of the board. This is workshop item number 13. This is workshop item 13, Financial Performance 2024 Mid-Year Review. So the fiscal year 24 and 25 budget was approved November 1st, 2023 by the board. District code requires semi-annual budget report comparison to actual results. So this is, the district code requires that twice a year, a mid-year review, which we're doing tonight, and then we'll do a year-end review in March of 2025 for 2024. Budget and related budget reports are non-GAAP, non-generally accepted accounting principles type financial statements that are more cash flow basis. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just not GAAP. They're a different style. And the primary difference is, and this is true with pretty much every government agency that I'm aware of, they do a non-GAAP budget presentation and have a non-GAAP budget style, and it's basically a cash flow basis. So it replaces depreciation, which is a non-cash systematic charging out of the deterioration of an asset, with capital expenditures. Other non-cash items would be like a pension adjustment, valuation adjustment, and then the budget items include cash flow items such as CapEx I just mentioned, and then of course debt service, principal and interest payments that are treated differently in GAAP financial statements. So important to understand that, because sometimes those questions come up. So for a budget, first I'm going to cover electric and then I'll cover water utility. For the electric utility, the annual budget for revenues is just over $38 million. And currently through June is $20.6 million, or 54% of the annual budget. And so that's slightly ahead of 50% halfway through the year. And we currently forecast for the year to be at 101%. Sell a little bit less electricity in the second half of the year than the first half of the year due to the first quarter, in particular with the weather impacts, typically, on average. Purchase power budget is $14.8 million, and currently running 47% through June, slightly under budget. So that's a good thing. That means under budget on expenses is a good thing, and forecasted to be just under budget at 98% of the annual amount. Operating expenses are also underrunning to budget at 46% of halfway through the year, and forecasted to be just under budget for the year, full year. So operating income budgeted is $6.9 million. Currently, which mid-year is tricky to look at, is right at $6 million. And then for the year is forecasted to be slightly better than budget at $7.8 million. And then there's other non-cash operating activities, non-operating cash activities that I will cover here in just a minute, which are slightly higher in outflow. The net budget activity is very similar to the budgeted amount of a loss of a negative cash flow of $350,000, forecasted at negative $370,000. And again, that's a cash flow basis. Diving in a little deeper on purchase power, on the left side here is a chart for, this is relates to the top line as well as purchase power. It's one of my favorite charts, and it shows average billed kWh per account per month. And you can see that our 2024 activities year to date, these gold dots, are consistent with prior years and the previous years for the most part. The red dots up here are 2023. Remember that record winter we had, so we sold a lot of electricity, and then we haven't finished the rest of the year on this side of the chart. On the right-hand side, this is purchase power, our megawatts purchased through year-to-date June. The actual of 89,932 megawatts are 2.2% higher than budget and down 5.4% to prior year. The prior year is inflated because of these red dots right in here. As I mentioned, the forecast for purchase power is just under the annual budget of 14.7, forecasting 14.5, but hard to know what's going to happen, transpire in this second half of the year, but current estimates are right around budget. I will be diving quite a bit more into purchase power in the next agenda item, just for a reminder on the power cost adjustment agenda item. For electric utilities non-operating cash flows, there's some big numbers in here, so I thought it was important to show some of the details. The budget is $13.3 million in outflow of capital expenditures, forecasted to be 10.5, and that's the less capital expenditures is due primarily to the timing of capital projects that are approved and anticipated in budget. Some of those are going to happen in 2024 that were budgeted in 2024. Some of those may happen in 2025 and not 2024, and thereby you have less capital expenditures in the year. Investment income is close to budget, but debt service is on budget for the year. The rate reserve transfer there is no planned use of rate reserves. That's a line item placeholder we did use it last year. And then transfers in and out is kind of the net of some other activities that I'll show on the next slide, and that is less in inflow, and that less in inflow is driven by the less amount of capital expenditures. So therefore, we needed less capital reserve utilization, and so instead of using $5.66 million in capital reserves, I'm forecasting that we will use $1.3 million in capital reserves. We were using more in vehicle reserves, and that's due to the approval of vehicle expenditures 2 and 3 years ago that we're finally getting delivery on. And so we're finally utilizing those vehicle reserve funds that we had anticipated to use, and just, again, a timing thing with vehicles in particular due to supply chain matters. We're hoping to use, as budgeted, $500,000 of AB 32 funds to help balance the budget. And then funding, so we transfer from general fund into vehicle reserves, $844,000, and replacement reserve funding is $506,000 for 2024. The end result, the measure of the tape for electric utility, is often looked at as far as reserve balances. The key reserve balances are presented here on this page. The first one is the operating reserve, forecasted to be on budget per the financial master plan at $7.5 million for the year 2024. $8.3 million is your actual target in district code, which is 50% of your operating expenses. But we knew that going into budget, and we're going to build it back over time. So the budget anticipated a $7.5 million balance, and I forecast a similar balance for the year, at year end. Capital reserve is, again, we're utilizing less capital reserve funds this year because of timing, so our balance is higher than we had forecasted. The target there is 1 year's average annual expenditures, which is 9.6, and that'll be close to the balance at the end of this year. The rest of these balances are at or near target, except for rate reserve. 50% of your purchase power is your target in district code, and that current balance is right at $6 million by year end forecasted. So as the board knows, and hopefully everyone else does, that we did use some rate reserve funds to minimize the rate impact on our customers. We utilized rate reserve funds to offset some extreme power costs, anomaly power cost in 2022 and January of 23. And we're going to pay that back over time. The budget approved to reimburse that over 5 years, and so about $379,000 over 5 years. So we'll build back up this balance over time to minimize the impact on rates. Let's see. The other important bar chart on here is the debt project proceeds funds. So in 2022, we issued debt for electric, and we have yet to spend those funds. There is an agenda item later today to help bolster that and get started on spending some of that, which would change that bar if approved. Moving on to the water utility, $19.1 million is the budget for revenues, running at 48%. As I'm sure most of you know, the majority of water sales are in July, August, and September, and the peak of the summer months, June as well this year because of how dry it was. So slightly under budget through June is anticipated and forecasted, and for the year we forecast revenues to be just slightly ahead of budget at $19.3 million. Operating expenses are underrunning year to date and forecast to be on budget for the year. Non-cash flow activities are here on the next page at $7.7 million outflow. You have in budget and $7.9 million in outflow on a forecast annual basis. Capital expenditures are notably higher for the water utility in 2024 than budget. So a couple of reasons. One, there was about $1 million in debt service funded projects that we thought were going to finish in 2023, and they're going to finish in 2024. There was $1 million left in 2023 to spend, and so that translates into cash flow, cash outflow in capital expenditures, but also an inflow of utilization of those debt service funds. The other item is that there have been several projects that, just due to timing between 2023, 2024, and 2025 and 26, have landed in 2024 due to various things, such as getting just ahead of the town repaving certain roads. We decided to do certain pipeline projects that might have been more linear footage than what was anticipated in budget for 2024. Debt service and investment income are on budget. As I mentioned, the debt project funds we anticipated in budget to use zero. Instead, we're using the $1 million that is left over to finish 6170 tank that we saw pictures of earlier this evening, and the pump station. On the transfers in and out, portion of facility fees for debt services on budget. Facility fee utilization is greater than budget. That is due to the timing of the tank. A portion of the proceeds are used for the facility fees are used for the tank, as well as the timing of the bridge, which was a facility fee project utilizing some facility fee funds for the bridge pipeline on the new bridge on, is that West River Street?
South River to
Yeah.
West River.
I'm sorry?
South River to West River?
Yes.
Yeah.
The new bridge in town. We put a pipe under there. We participated in that project. And we're using more capital reserve funds. Because
Michael,
of-
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Didn't we lose $1 million last year in '23? Didn't this? And we have $1 million extra this year?
For the capital projects that were funded with the debt service, the debt that we issued in 2022, we had $1 million left to spend in that we thought we were going to complete the project in 2023. Instead, we completed the project in 2024, or about to complete it, and use those funds in 2024.
That was where we put aside that $1 million then.
That's the $1 million that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
As far as reserve balances for the water utility, the projected balance for the operating reserve is 6.6 million, which is on target, 50% of operating expenses. So the operating reserve for water is spot on, which is great. The capital reserve balance is 3.3 million, which is about 3.3 million than it used to be. So that's awesome. It's still significantly below what the district code targets and aspires to, which is a 1 year's average balance of capital expenditures, which is up there at $8 million. So we know that in the financial master plan, and over time, we're going to grow that balance, but you don't want to do that in 1 year, or it'd be quite painful.
Thank you.
Then I was just going to cover a few other things that are important financially, I think, from just a kind of a mid-year financial update. Just a reminder on debt service. This is the arrow underneath there points to 2024. The blue bars are 2024 debt service for water. I'm sorry. The blue bars are water debt service out to 2052, and the orange bar are out to 2047 for electric debt service. Neither utility is highly leveraged. There is room for more debt service if we ever chose or needed to have such a thing. And accounts receivable balance. So as we all know, during the pandemic, this utility, as well as other utilities, all utilities in the country and the world, experienced delinquencies in accounts receivable balances. This is the tail of the tape through 2019 through June of 2024. The balance is still slightly ahead of where we were right when the pandemic started, but still substantially low when you look at our industry averages. We're well significantly below industry averages as far as delinquent accounts 90 days plus. So, and then we do have one large corporate customer, commercial customer, as part of this balance here of 42,000. Couple other slides here, just from a global CPI perspective and the utility. The orange bar is the CPI index for San Francisco electricity per kWh cost for 10 years. The blue bar is United States electricity per kWh cost, and then the gray bar is the Truckee-Donner PUD. The 10-year growth rate for the United States is 2.9. San Francisco, for over the 10 years, has grown at 8.4, and the PUD has grown at 3.7. This is the same information, just getting them all 10 years ago at the same starting point. It just visually shows the San Francisco electricity rates growing and us growing just slightly faster than the United States. Similar information for, this is Truckee-Donner PUD water rates. And this is the United States water, sewer, and trash. They combine them as a CPI. They will not I'm not aware of a CPI that's specific to water. I'd love to see one. Start that business someday. We are pacing over 10 years slightly higher than the USA average. That could be any number of reasons. One would be the cost of doing business in California. Two, in particular, is reinvesting in the infrastructure. As you know, we have a aggressive capital improvement plan for water to fix leaky pipes and hopefully get ahead of regulatory environment as well. This is the same information, just starting everybody 10 years ago at the same point. We monitor the price of gas, fuel costs, just internally as well as for our overheads, monitoring that. And it's interesting information too. The price of fuel, gasoline specifically, 10 years ago and today for the United States are basically the same price. 10 years ago and today versus for San Francisco area of California, it's 92 cents greater, almost $1 higher than 10 years ago. But a lot of influences there. This is a trend over the last 12 months, purchases last year versus this year. So the trend is slightly down in our fuel costs. You probably noticed that as well.
Your chart doesn't go high enough to show Truckee.
It does not.
We're unique.
Note to self. Thank you,
Prepare for the
Director
EV.
Laliotis. Good point. This is inflation for, I think it's actually 11 years, not 10 years. The blue is the United States, and this is CPI for San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward, and the 10-year is 3% for the United States and 3.6 for San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward. This is the United States inflation rate. If you were around or remember back in '75 and the recession and inflation over 10% and inflation over 13, this is another recession here in the early 80s. And these gray vertical bars are recessions. This is the 08-09 Great Recession. And you'll see inflation rate almost at zero for a pretty good length of time here, very low. This is 2.5 right here where the red dot is. So very low inflation. Then we had as we all know, the pain of the last couple of years. 22 came in at 8% inflation rate for the US and 4.1 for 2023. It's trending around 3%. Whether we have a gray bar recession here in Q3 or 4 is still a coin flip as reported last year at the same time. Fiscal impact is financial review of actual to budget activity and year-end projections for 2024 Service Board's review of the district's current financial performance. The recommendation this evening is to accept and file the 2024 mid-year financial update. I would also add there's much more detail in the actual staff report that's available online for those that are interested. With that, I'll conclude, open it up for questions. Thank you for your time.
Great.
Thank
You,
Michael.
Mike. To the board, opening it up for questions or comments for Mike on our finances.
I'm happy to go first. No, coming into this presentation or into meeting tonight, the question of the debt service was something that kind of was in my brain to ask about, but you went right through it. So I appreciate the work that you went through that and to kind of guide us and help us understand where the debt service comes in and that we're going to be spending the money that we're getting into debt for. So, thanks.
All right.
No comments. Thank you for the great presentation. I think everything is looking to be in line with forecasts and, the variances on capital projects. Obviously, capital projects are a very dynamic financial affair, especially for a utility that can only build things 6 months a year. Appreciate that detail, and thank you. Thanks to your staff, too, for keeping these numbers straight.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Any questions, Jill?
I thought I had one 2 minutes ago. My brain went blank.
I have a feeling.
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
It's all right.
Maybe
Let's,
maybe I'll come back to me in a minute or two.
Yeah, that's same sort of, thank you for the presentation, thank you for translating the numbers for us, the slingshot sort of nature of spending and projects and when the money actually gets spent is, as Director Lallier has pointed out, it's just the nature of the beast and it's all about the float sometimes. So thank you for that presentation.
I know what I was going to say. I was going to say that, Michael, you've done a great job. You got all those figures, and I hope you got the decimals in the right place.
I hope so too.
Right? All of our fingers are crossed, right?
And you say we're on spot, so we're on spot with the budget and so on now.
Yes, sir, I would certainly add another, if I could add another paragraph, it'd be, things look very good for the year. We're pacing on budget for operating expenses, which I don't have any huge anomalies to talk about, which I have had to talk about some years, at least not yet, so far through this year. So, so far so good.
What happened, I saw so many figures in my brain that I lost my brain.
Understand.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Right on. Thank you very much. All right, that brings us to our action items for this evening. Number 14, consideration of approval for the 2024 Quarter 2 Power Cost Adjustment, the PCA, of .0012 charge per kilowatt hour billed in August, September, and October. Okay, we're going to get more information here.
All right, this is action item number 14, power cost adjustment, Q2. The electric, as I covered just briefly earlier, the electric utilities 2024 budget for purchase power is $14.92 million. It's 48% of your operating expenses of the electric utility from a budget perspective. And on a cash flow basis, on the uses side, it's 32% of the outflow. So a third of the expenditures of electric utility in a given year, at least for budget 2024, is purchase power. So it's a material item. In 2024, we have 174,000 megawatt hours purchased times a budgeted average cost of $85.77, which equates to that 14.924 million purchase power. The details of what's in that $85.77 can vary, and they vary greatly, month to month, year to year, day to day. This is we covered this chart in during the budget process. This is the development of that $85.77 per megawatt hour and 14.92 million in cost. And we introduced through the budget process that was approved November 1st, 2023, we introduced a power cost adjustment. What is that? It's a new line item on our electric bills here at the utility. It can be a charge or a credit, depending on whether costs are higher or lower than we anticipated in budget. It adds an element of cost variability and transparency on the customer's bills. It's a quarterly true-up between budget and actual for a key cost item. As I mentioned, it's a third of electric utilities budget. For significant fluctuations in cost variance greater than 15%, the district's rate reserve could also be factored by the board for a contribution, if you will, or a credit. A PCA helps manage the fluctuating cost to purchase power. And we'll see that PCA amount on their bill, up or down. For the first quarter, they saw a credit. I'll get into that in a minute. When the cost to purchase power varies to budget, we pass this on, basically we're passing this on to the customer through the PCA instead of every 2 years when we're setting rates, or every 3 years, or however periodically you set rates. perhaps during the budget process. And of course, it adds a level of transparency with our customers. Many utilities have this type of adjustment on their bills. They also call it a wholesale power adjustment or fuel cost adjustment. So we're not alone in having this type of item on a utility bill. Per the ordinance that was established on November 1st of 2023, this is the schedule. And for that first quarter, at the May 1st board meeting, we established a PCA for the next 3 months billing cycles of 0.0088 kilowatt hours per kilowatt hour credit. And that translated to around, on an average for residential bill, of about $7 credit on the customer's bill on average for the upcoming 3 months. For this current proposed PCA Q2 adjustment, it's actually 0.0012 per kilowatt charge is recommended, which translates to somewhere in that 50 cents residential to, on average of all customers, $1 extra on their bill for the month, for 3 months. So somewhere in that 50 cent to $1 range impact on the average customer bill. This is diving into some of this is going to feel a little bit like a purchase power cost analysis, because that is the details of what we're going through to determine the PCA, right? So I'm going to cover some things quicker than others. Please stop me if you're not confused or I go too fast or don't like what I say. So here's the total megawatt hours purchased. I would like to clarify that the PCA is all about the cost per megawatt hour, not the volume of megawatt hours purchased, because the volume is translated into a customer's bill up or down and based on the volume that they purchase. So this has more to do with the cost per megawatt hour that we're buying at a wholesale rate and then translating that into customer rates. So on the volume side, which we do have to factor to determine the PCA, it's a component. The 3-year average is 37.7 million on the far left. On the far right is our 2024 actual for Q2, almost 38.1 thousand megawatt hours purchased, and that's down from budget 1.3, down from last year 3.5, and up 1% to the 3-year average. And again, this is specifically for the 3 months of April, May, June. The cost per megawatt hour are the orange dots here, and the actual cost was almost $85 per megawatt hour, and budget was $81.42. So we were 4% over in our cost per megawatt hour, and I'll get into why here in a minute. And we're actually 16% higher than Q2 of last year. Quite a bit higher. So we got to look at the various sources. This is a tree line chart for our year-to-date June megawatt hours purchased of 89,932 megawatts, 24% through Horse Butte. This isn't an RP3 specific schedule, but this is off the UAMPS bills. And each source has varying levels of variability and things going on, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But just this shows the various. We have power from a lot of different places and sources: Red Mesa, Veo, hydro, landfill natural gas. I believe I got that right. LNG, landfill gas, and solar, of course. So in general, the market of electricity prices, both in the U.S. and the West Coast, and for us, are in some fashion always influenced by the price of natural gas, because natural gas is a leader in the amount of electricity, the source of providing power in the U.S. for for electricity generation. It's natural gas power plants. So it can be a predictor of the price of fuel. And so, as you know, we have the Nebo plant that utilizes natural gas. Also, our unspecified sources utilize natural gas prices. Natural gas prices have been flat, so that was a good thing. This is last year, natural gas prices Q2. This circle here is natural gas prices this year. So they've been relatively stable other than this one spike in January. I think that was a supply chain issue. So our cost per megawatt hour for Q2 varies by source, as we all know. The landfill natural gas at Trans-Jordan Murray was relatively stable. Red Solar Mesa was more expensive than budget and last year, and that's because the production of Red Mesa in Q2 was down slightly due to some technical problems, I believe, with transmission, the ability to transmit it. And so their volume was not there, and to cover fixed costs, that the fixed costs don't change, so the cost per megawatt hour went up. So they had a maintenance problem or a transmission problem, not sure exactly which. If we want to get into that, we can. Horse Butte was a wind source, and there was good wind, but also high cost for our wind power for Q2. The natural gas item was significantly more than budget. There was a maintenance issue with Nebo plant in Q2, so the production in May was way down, and that impacted the cost per megawatt hour because there's a lot of fixed costs with the Nebo plant, or really all plants. So those were the main drivers, and then our transmission and EIM costs were also slightly higher than budget for the quarter. So all these things, the variances added up to $3.46 cost variance per megawatt hour greater than budget. And dividing that into the megawatt hours purchased is $131,000 variance driven by the Q2 cost variance in megawatt hours purchased per megawatt hour. We then had $87,000 in PCA Q1 true-up costs, and that was a combination of some estimated costs for March that were conservatively estimated in that 0.0088 cent credit. There was some estimated costs for March that I now know the actuals, so I'm truing that up, and that was a favorable adjustment. And then also I'm estimating how much we're going to collect in PCA in the future billings of that Q1 in the following 3 months. And so I'm truing up for that variance as well. So that'll be a perpetual catch-up item. The dollar estimates for Q2 are not as significant as the Q1 dollar estimates last quarter. So the net is a $44,000 charge. Dividing that in by the the kilowatt hours estimated to be billed for the next 3 months creates a PCA per kWh charge of 0.0012 cents. So that, with a 12% rate increase, that increases our rates from 12 to 12.5 on the average rate increase, and then prospectively. Again, this is somewhere in that 52 cents on residential to all customers, about $1 average cost incremental per bill, depending on how much kWh they utilize for the next 3 months. So pretty nominal, big picture. I failed to mention in the previous presentation, so since I'm remembering it now, I'll throw it in, Page 90 of the annual comprehensive financial report has a comparative analysis of our electric rates and water rates between us and other benchmarks throughout the state of California. And you'll find that we're relatively competitive both in electric and water rates. Page 90, that can be found on our website under the financials. Fiscal impact for this power cost adjustment. The net effect of the PCA charge of $44,384 for Q2 is to equalize the purchase power cost per megawatt hour fluctuation To the extent to which megawatt hour volume varies, purchase power costs will continue to vary to budget. The recommendation this evening is approve a power cost adjustment for 2024 Q2 of 0.0012 charge per kilowatt hour billed in August, September, and October of 2024. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Vice President Finn.
Great. Thank you, Mike. A lot
Yeah.
of numbers. Do we have any public comment or questions on this presentation? Seeing none. I'm going to open it up to the board. Do we have any questions or comments?
No, but I'm glad he's doing the figures.
Right?
Sure. So, at the end of the day, the revenue collected or credited from the PCA is just a net to the revenue, total revenue for the electric department?
Correct.
Okay. How much, I'm just curious how much time and effort this analysis, sorry, Krista.
You took my question, man.
I just wonder how much time and effort this analysis takes your staff to do quarterly.
You know, it's not too bad. It's 5 to 8 hours. It's, you know, again, it's a, power cost is a really material, important line item for the utility of electric. And we talk about purchase power almost every day, if not twice a day, in some fashion or another.
Or more than twice a day.
Yeah.
All day, every day.
So, I mean, it's a important thing to keep an eye on. There's so many moving parts and pieces. There is some variability to it. You know, the big picture of this variability, it's not huge. It does add an element of fluctuation in customers' bills. We knew that going in.
Yeah.
It was another tool in our tool chest beyond rate reserve to address, you know, spikes and credits happening in power costs.
Yeah, no, I guess I'm not questioning the premise of why we do this. I guess, you know, just, I'd like to continue to see this process for the next maybe 2 more quarters and, you know, kind of look at the trends and decide, it's like, is quarterly the right frequency? Is it semi-annual?
Sure.
You know, we giveth and taketh away in some respects. So how often should we be doing that process? And so it's just my observations, kind of, but we're still very early in
Yes.
the stages of this implementation, so I'm not going to overreact. I'd like to see it play out further into the next year to see how dynamic this process is and how valuable it is, and if it is something that can be adjusted to maybe semi-annual or something like that, that makes more sense. But I would take those recommendations from you guys as staff because you're the ones doing this work, but we're the ones who are talking to our constituents about what's happening to their bill every 3 months. So, but anyway, no, I appreciate this. I really think it's good. I mean, it's a great stopgap to having to tap into our rate reserves as frequently and as aggressively as we have had to in the past. So I'm still supportive of why we're doing this. But, you know, I kind of consider it a little bit work in progress and kind of see how it plays out over the next year or so.
Thank you, Director Laliotis. He stole one of my questions, was exactly that. What do the staff resources look like in implementing this policy? Have we had any customer feedback? Did anybody notice that they got a $7 credit on their bill for the past 3 months? Just here, I mean, yeah, just
I would never say never,
right on.
but the credits are rare, you know, or the commentary that direction are rare.
Yeah.
They're more when it's a big charge.
Well,
But,
just because no one says anything doesn't mean we shouldn't do the right thing, so it's okay. But I was just curious, because Rates is a big topic of discussion for us all the time, just like power purchase agreements are and for, staff. So I'm interested, if there ever is feedback, I'd be interested to hear what it is.
I will double check with the customer service team and Grant and report out next meeting.
And it's quite possible we'll hear a whole bunch about the dollar increase. But, that'll be interesting, again, as we move forward into this new world. I had it may be a question for Jared about the chart that you had that showed what was most of our costs per power source, and the unspecified pool is usually more expensive. It's usually quite a bit more expensive, and on that chart, it was quite a bit less expensive. What's going on with the unspecified power sources? That seemed, yeah, that's the one. And you can see we budgeted, because it's usually an expensive thing, and it's way the heck down there at 3%, whatever percent that was.
Certainly part of it is this right here.
Was it natural
This
gas?
Natural gas.
Declined? Because
Jared?
Nebo, our specific gas went up, but the pool went down. Fantastic.
So the question is why is the unspecified pool lower than expected?
I guess so. I mean, dramatically lower than expected. I know we don't know what's in the unspecified pool. It's unspecified. So, but are there things going on in the bigger markets that you're aware of that would be reflecting that?
Sure. So there's a couple factors there. So the unspecified pool is consisting of some market purchases that were brought to the board a number of years ago. That aren't like the generators like Red Mesa, Horseshoe. It's these markets that we locked into long-term contracts for. Long-term being, let's call it 5 years, where you're buying some amount of power every single month for in high load and low load hours. Then the other piece of that is then, of course, it's your actual market purchases to fill in the gaps of your, if you're 80% covered and you have 20% exposed, that last 20% will be filled in by the market purchases. So in that particular quarter, there were some decisions we made around market purchases on the spot market, where we had an opportunity to say, well, we could buy from this source or from this source. It's a point of entry into our system.
Okay.
And we made some decisions like, oh, let's go ahead and buy it. Let's have it input power here, not here. And it worked well. And it saved us some money this time. Obviously, that was always the goal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So, when it's not tied to anything but the money, because you don't know where it's coming from, you're just looking for what's the best deal you can get, essentially.
Okay.
So, but I would say that one of the big factors, of course, too, is Mike mentioned the gas prices are nice now, and kind of more like normal to what we're used to. But hydro, of course, had some really good years and good snow for a few years, and so the battery of snow has been good.
Nice.
In the area. So that really settles a lot of the market prices across the entire West.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you for that explanation, because it was confusing. And another thing that was a little confusing to me there was our power purchase agreements. We buy power at a set price? Do we not? Like the Red Mesa, for example. Why does that fluctuate?
So that can fluctuate based on what we need to do, because we're also the owner of the plant. So let's say there was some maintenance that we didn't foresee. We may one of the wind farms there got struck by lightning, and so one wind turbine blade was down. So it's one of many, but it still outputs a little less energy, which means your rate appears, because it is a little higher, because it's not doing quite what you want to do.
Okay.
So that's one factor. But one way of giving one simplest way I can is looking. So imagine a generator where what's happening really is imagine your home bill. Your home bill, basically, utility looks at your bill, utility reads a meter, and then bills you for the usage for the previous month, for what you actually use, because we can see it. As a utility, when we're actually buying power forecasted for the month ahead, and then it's settled up at the end of the month. So there's that little factor there. Another little factor is when you have a generator, you basically picture a generator, and the generator, we have this agreement as the owner of the generator, that is putting power into the grid. It's putting the grid at a set value. It's set by the markets. It's not, if we can sell for $20, we don't sell $20. It's whatever the market pays for. It's a market-based thing. Then the other side is where we're buying power from, also from the grid. There's a correlation, but there's a generator that we're selling in, and there's the action of buying it, and then you balance the two at the end of the month. So if the markets go sky high and you're overly exposed, you're paying a lot of money, and you'll see it. If the markets go sky high, but you're fully covered, you barely even feel it.
Notice it. I'm not sure that answered exactly my question, but that's okay. I will follow up on this on my own time with you on your own time.
I probably should think of the question a little deeper to give
Yeah, right.
a better answer with the graph.
It's okay. It's all
visual.
good. Thank you. Thank you, Jared. And I think that was my last thing, except for just a note on transmission fees and understanding that they're going to be increasing. We know this. And once again, thinking about power and our paying for power like we do water, as the resource becomes less expensive, but the pipes, and in this case, the transmission becomes more expensive. We might be thinking about that moving forward with our rate structure. But another discussion, different time. Thank you very much, y'all. This stuff is fascinating to me. I'm sorry I take up so much time with questions. Okay. Is that it? Wrap it up? Oh, we have to take action.
I'll make a motion to move staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Very good. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Finn?
Yes.
The record will note President Bender is absent.
Thank you. Item number 15, consideration to enter into an agreement with the Truckee Fire Protection District to accept Measure T grant funding. So I imagine we have a presentation on this as well. Great. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Good evening, Vice President Finn, members of the board. I'm Keith Renshaw, Electric Engineering Manager. This is action item number 15. So actually quite a bit of background on this agenda item, but the district operates a pretty robust vegetation management program. And the main goal of that program is to ensure compliance with CPUC general orders for overhead facilities, electric facilities, I should say. Ensure compliance with public resource code for line clearance, pole clearing, defensible space requirements, as well as complying with the district's own wildfire mitigation plan, which is updated, presented to the board annually, and submitted to the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board. So at this point, I would like to introduce Ryan Purcell. He's the district's vegetation program manager, to give us a little recap of the 2023's vegetation work.
Evening, Vice President Finn and members of the board. I'm Ryan Purcell, Vegetation Program Manager for the district. I'd like to provide some background on our vegetation management plan. I think this is a good opportunity to kind of showcase some of the things the district is doing. So right now, the district spends approximately $2 million in 2023. That was with P31 Enterprises, the district's vegetation line contractor, and also with Brad Crane Services for on-call crane services. Those annual contracts are awarded to the lowest responsive bidder and presented to the board through the annual procurement process. Staff expects to spend approximately $2 million for vegetation management in 2024. Some of these niche graphs just kind of go over the totals for vegetation management matrix. That top graph, the far left-hand bar, shows that we removed over 2,158 branches away from our primary infrastructure. That's just to help with wildfire mitigation, contacts, outages, and a whole bunch of other things that benefits us. The three middle bars, those are just kind of smaller. Those are totals for trees removed along our primary infrastructure.
The far green bar is a little over 2,700 yards of green waste chipped in 2023. And the small little guy, that is 150 poles cleared to meet compliance with Public Resource Code 4292. The bottom graph is, it's a tree trim service order. We started tracking these because we started to get more inundated from our customers about tree and vegetation work. So that's definitely trending up from 2021 to 2023. Most of that is customer related from them calling in, Major T inspections, homeowner insurance inspections, just increased public awareness of the wildfire threat in the community. This NITS matrix is kind of our trimming miles per year. So we can see from 2020 on that top graph to 2023, we're actually getting more work done. We're trimming more miles. So the program is really starting to showcase like we're getting a lot done along our primary infrastructure. The bottom graph, this is a cost per mile of clearing overhead infrastructure, which that cost is starting to trend down and kind of plateau offish to where we're seeing the benefits of our program and the cost of getting more mileage done. It's like, these next few slides are more kind of projects that we've done. This kind of shows that pole grubbing that's related to Public Resource Code at a pole out in Glenshire where we pick up service from NV Energy. The before picture's kind of on the left. It just shows the pole with a ton of brush around it. And the picture on the right is the after, showing what our crews have done to meet that requirement, and it's seated in spots. This NITS project, this was kind of a collaboration between Truckee Fire, CAL FIRE, NV Energy, Tahoe Donner, Liberty Utilities. We're missing their icon on there, but they kind of approached this on what it would take for the district to make our infrastructure basically stand alone, to where if the region has a fire and they're unable to provide support services to that infrastructure, how could we protect it through vegetation management? So this is what the substation looked like prior to us performing the work. And this is what it looked like after. We removed 39 trees and masticated fully around the substation to try to provide that greater defensible space on that critical infrastructure. And we've now kind of started to take that on to our water infrastructure. That's pretty critical as well. So we are performing a lot of this work with CAL FIRE inmate hand crews when they're available, just to provide more reliability for our water customers as well. And this just shows the kind of after the crews have been there and what the property looks like. This was a project we completed last summer. This was Truckee Circuit 5. It kind of feeds Alder, Beacon, and then out to Prosser or Lakeview. There's quite a bit of this section of line that has pretty limited access for vehicles. Most of our work was done climbing. That tree on the right there, it's kind of hard to see, but there's orange cover actually up on our primary wire, but that's the prime example of a hazard tree that we don't want along our district infrastructure. Sorry, Keith. It was overhanging the primary wire. So now here it is, a picture of it. It's been removed, and behind it where that red arrow kind of points, that kind of points to that more limited access area that is more challenging to do both vegetation and overhead infrastructure work. And these are just some of the other activities. This is kind of storm response, cleanup. The crews run through the winter, and this kind of shows why. That tree on the left, it loaded up with snow and actually just leaned right into our wire. It ended up causing an outage for quite a few customers. Middle picture just kind of shows the tree crews working in the winter environment. And that image on the right shows primary wire loaded up with snow, and it ended up sagging into vegetation below the wire and causing an outage as well. This hazard tree, this is kind of a good example of using that Bragg Crane contract that we have. This tree was about 180 feet away from the road, so this gives us the ability to remove that tree in big chunks without having the climate and getting it out with that contractor. Image on the left, that just is how we're tracking our work throughout the year. Each one of those dots is a location where we've performed work, whether it be branches removed or trees removed, and then it's color-coded by year. And the image on the right just shows those same dots in a hazard level of how bad that vegetation is in relation to our overhead infrastructure. And future ideas, enhancing partnerships with other local agencies and utility providers, including CAL FIRE, Truckee Fire, Liberty Utilities, NV Energy, PG&E, Colorado Donner Forestry, Truckee Donner Land Trust, and more. Utilizing other professional services where needed, arborists, registered professional foresters. Increased technology, I think this will be a big area in the future. Drone inspections is going to definitely be the future of inspecting vegetation. Wildfire risk analysis, and providing green waste generated for fuel for biomass facilities. That's the end of my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions or turn it back to Keith.
Right on. Sorry. Thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have any public comments on this presentation?
Vice President Finn,
Sorry.
we still haven't gotten to the actional part of the presentation.
That was just the end of that part of the presentation.
Turn it back over to Keith.
Great background, Ryan. Thank you for that.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Keith.
it. So I'll go over the actionable part of the presentation. So in October of last year, staff was approached by community members with an idea to partner on a larger scale fuel reduction and defensible space project. The proposed project affects 5 parcels, 3 of which are district-owned properties. The proposed project also has the potential for grant funding by the Truckee Fire Protection District Measured T Community Wildfire Prevention Grant Program. In general, partnering with other community members or public agencies generally results in higher success rate for grant funding opportunities. And this specific proposed project is just south of another 200-acre fuels reduction project that was completed using Measure T grant funds in 2023. And the proposed project, let me see here, is the areas on the map on the screen here that are checkered black. So the project that was completed last year is all the grayed out area to the north. And the proposed project, which has come to be known as the Tundra TDPUD Partnership Project, is this 109 acres of fuel reduction on these 5 different parcels right here. A little bit more background on the project area. Again, 3 district-owned parcels, one of those parcels containing critical water infrastructure. The total amount of fuel reduction on district-owned property is about 47.8 acres. So that, just to be clear, that's not the full acreage of the parcels. That's just the work that needs to be completed. The 2 privately owned parcels, one being 3.1 acres, shown here, tiny little parcel in green. And then another larger parcel just to the north of district-owned property, 58.1 acres. So again, 109 total acres of fuel reduction and defensible space clearing would be included in the proposed partnership project. The area requiring the work includes a lot of dead and dying trees and has a lot of dense underbrush, really hard to get to, difficult access for equipment, personnel. And there is a pretty significant wildfire concern due to the proximity to critical water and electric infrastructure in the area, as well as the surrounding communities. It's worth noting that NV Energy's transmission corridor runs right between the affected areas here. So on June 14th of this year, Measure T grant program application was submitted by Mr. Steve Lichlitter on behalf of the Tundra TDPUD partnership to the Truckee Fire Protection District. On June 27th of this year, the project was indeed selected for grant funding for the 24-25 period. And on July 16th at Truckee Fire Protection District's board meeting, the Fire Protection District Board awarded the partnership $335,036 in Measure T grant funds for the partnership project. The grant funds that were awarded are based on an estimated cost of $3,600 per acre for fuel reduction and defensible space work by a licensed vegetation contractor. The table on the screen kind of just shows you a breakdown between the three parcel owners here. At the top, the properties affected, the total acreage of work required, and the acre share of the overall project, and the grant funding each grantee would be allocated by the grant funds. The grant funds awarded are contingent on matching funds or in-kind contributions from each of the property owners within the partnership. The district has committed $50,000 of in-kind contribution to the project in the form of contracted vegetation services. I would also like to point out that the district has already budgeted $50,000 in 2024 for defensible space clearing around water facilities located on one of the parcels that would be included in this project. This table is just an overview of the partnership contributions that were submitted with the application. As you can see, the district's contribution is $50,000 in vegetation contractor, direct paid by the district, and some of the other activities that are being provided by the other partners within the partnership. Fiscal impact, the district's in-kind contribution, again, as I mentioned earlier, has been budgeted for 2024. The partnership intends to utilize P31 Enterprises for all of the contracted vegetation work on the project. And just to note, the district is currently in contract with P31 for vegetation work for 2024, and the scope of P31's contract does include the scope of work required by this project. The district also intends to utilize the $122,080 in awarded grant funds for the additional fuel reduction work completed by P31 on district-owned property that are included in the grant-funded project. And the recommendation tonight is to authorize the general manager to enter into agreement with Mr. Steve Lichlitter for the Tundra TDPUD partnership and/or the Truckee Fire Protection District to accept the $122,080 in Measure T grant funding for the project. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Keith. I apologize for trying to skip the action.
That's okay.
Okay, now, any public comments on this item?
Vice President Finn, we had 2 emailed public comments on this item in support of the district's participation in this project. Standard practice has been for the board not to read emailed public comments, but I just wanted to make note that there were 2 emailed comments in support of it, and I'll provide those to the board. Unfortunately, they came too late for me to include it in the packet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brian. So, noted, 2 emailed comments in support of this project. Opening it up to the board for questions, comments.
Thank you guys very much for your presentations. Ryan, that was, I'm like, finally, a lot of the answers that, that I've been looking for, that just been curious about, has been answered here. So I do appreciate all the work that you did for that. Yeah. And thank you for putting this all together. If we were only doing, I'm getting kind of confused with, we get grant funding here, we've put in 50,000, somebody else put in 15,000, and that it's a partnership. Are we is the district like shouldering additional expense to try to clear everybody's properties, or I'm getting sensitive to the using public funds for private people.
Great question. That all of the district's funds will be spent on vegetation management work conducted on district parcels. And so it was, as Keith was pointing out, that the $50,000 in-kind contribution was already budgeted and was work that was already going to be done by the district, including it as a larger partnership within the footprint of where the grant funds can be utilized, gives an advantage to the application process so that the private owner partnerships also now through the partnership collectively have a bigger footprint on the impact. So Truckee Fire Protection District, Measure T funds are looking for the largest impact their funds can have on vegetation management. A couple of the criteria for the awarding of this grant was that it's adjacent to and continues some of the work that was done in 2023. And so each entity will be doing financial contributions to work done on their property and only their properties, but collectively, the grant is awarding to fill in the gaps.
Okay, that makes sense.
To add on, the total amount of work at the $3,600 per acre, if you were to apply that to the 48.7 acres of district property, is equivalent to about $172,080. So our contribution is $50,000 of that. So it would take the district $172,000 to do this work on district property. Our contribution will be the $50,000. Measure T will fund the remainder of that work.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm always happy to see this work done across the community. So, thank you.
No, great presentations. I appreciate the data. I think that's the first time we've ever seen like that granular level of branches trimmed. Which, you know, some people might find interesting, some people might not. But at the end of the day, no, I appreciate that. And it's good to see how our vegetation management project is at work and how it's been working and what the fluctuations and differences are over the last few years. But no, I just appreciate us working with, you know, public and private partnerships once again in this community to make a difference. I appreciate, that was a great question by Kim about, you know, are we spending money for someone else's project, you know? But pretty clear that the cost for our parcel would have been much higher and that we are benefiting from the grant funds for that project. So a benefit to our ratepayers. So yeah, and thank you to the other partners in this program to make it happen, so.
Thank you both. Joe?
Who is Steve Litchiter? Who is Steve Litchiter?
Steve Litchler is one of the partners in the project. So he's a parcel owner. He owns one of the parcels that would be contained within the overall scope of the project. Yeah.
So he's one of the partners then?
Correct.
Yeah.
Steve Litchler and Larry Long are the two other partners in the project with the district.
Oh, we're getting part of this grant, it'll be $122,000, but we'll put in 50 to make it 172, right?
That is correct.
Okay, now, we have contracts with tree cutters right now. We have 3 with them? We have 3.
We have one contract for 2024 with P31 Enterprises. That's correct. They're our primary line clearance vegetation contractor.
Okay. Now, they're the ones that be getting the money and the end result.
They are being paid to do the work. That is
Oh,
correct.
yeah, I know that. But this will go towards that project.
That's correct.
Fire.
The district's contribution of $50,000 is going towards that annual contract that's already been board approved.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
There's a couple of important notes, kind of continues on Director Harris's question. Also, P31 will be doing the work out there. Each property owner has their own contract with P31. So the district has its contract that we already had in budget for this year. Each of the private party ownerships will also have a contract. The benefit here is through the reduced cost of mobilization and additional contractors being in, the project saves money on contracted cost as well. So the partnership saves in the overall cost of the project, also the benefit of being awarded the Measure T funds. And Mr. Lichlitter is the actual lead applicant for the grant. And so the recommendation that before you this evening is slightly revised from what was on the staff report, because behind the scenes, we're still finalizing all of the agreements. We're looking for board's general authorization to pursue this project in these agreements.
But we're dealing with him.
Correct. And so the fire district in Measure T requires a single applicant that, as the lead applicant. Our agreement will be with Mr. Lichlitter or Mr. Lichlitter and the fire district to make sure that we receive the funds as subsequent beneficiaries of the grant award. So Mr. Lichlitter represents the group. If we go into an agreement with the group who has been awarded this grant fund opportunity.
All righty, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and I, of course, am always appreciate these partnerships and what they can accomplish. It's seems to be it's the way it is now, that you need to forge partnerships to receive grant monies from pretty much any entity at this point. So I'm happy to see it on all of these different levels. Okay, do we have a motion?
I move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Aguirre?
I'll vote yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Finn?
Yes.
The record will state President Bender is absent.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, thank you both for your presentation. Which brings us to our next action item. Item number 16, consideration of approval for a contract with Murray City, Utah for renewable energy from the Trans-Jordan landfill gas generation site. I'm glad to see this.
Good evening, Vice President Finn, members of the board, Mr. Carpenter, Electric Utility Director. Okay, so this item, so this is a contract, a new contract, or an extension kind of sense of one. Oh, sorry, thanks. I'll go again. I'm Jared Carpenter, Electric Utility Director. Good evening, Vice President Finn, members of the board. So this is a contract that we're coming for approval. This is the Trans-Jordan contract, which I'm sure you're familiar with. We've had it involved with it for a while. It's with the city of Murray over in Utah. This is a landfill site that's over there. It was built in 1958, but in 2010 they added a generator. The generator is fueled by capturing the methane gas coming out of the landfill to run the generator, thereby making it, by definition, renewable energy. For a reference point, this could power somewhere around 5,000 homes, around 4,000 homes. It's about 5 megawatt output, something like that, anyways. That's a picture there to the right of the generator, a big Caterpillar generator that just runs on methane. So since 2010, we've been purchasing about 70% of the energy output. But this contract ends this year, at the end of the year. We wish to continue our partnership with them because it's been good for both of us. But things have changed with the energy market, so we had to kind of change the contract to be able to continue. where we've kind of come to an agreement with our friends over there is to keep in mind, a number of years ago when you're buying energy, you're basically only buying it as a block of energy. Pretty much that simple. Today's market, you have these high load hours, you have these light load hours, you have renewable energy credits, and amongst other markets too, resource adequacy, voltage balance markets. There's a bunch of them nowadays that didn't exist and more growing quickly. So the proposed contract that we're bringing forward is to buy energy at kind of those three different values there. So if we buy any energy at high load hours, $80. Low load hours, $65. If it's just the renewable energy credits, $7 per megawatt hour. The agency that would perform the scheduling of that power into our balancing authorities, into the greater grid, so to speak, that's UAMPS. And the City of Murray is also a UAMPS member, so pretty simple, both of us to work together there, as we have for many years. This kind of contract does fit well with our IRP. That was calling out, the one that we finished and presented to the board, that basically calls out that we need to keep shopping for more sources to replace ones that we're losing. This is one we could have lost. We're trying to keep it on some level. It helps us comply with the RPS laws of California, and it will also help maintain stable rates for customers. And as a very important point that everyone has become more and more aware of across the nation is that this is a kind of renewable energy that can be delivered 24/7. Very important and very challenging to find nowadays. For fiscal impact, it's a little difficult to compare this one to the previous contract that we've had over the years because it's three different products. Also, too, one of the big changes here is the City of Murray, they're in a situation like most utilities where this is their generator and they need to keep a lot of the power for themselves, for their own use, for their community and their town, which is very understandable, of course. So this is why amongst the three different products that we have the chance to buy from them, it helps kind of meet both of our mutual interests. So we don't lose everything, but they have some opportunities to keep some. It works well. But because of that, we never really know what we're going to buy because we don't know what they're going to keep. Also, if you get some bad weather, if somehow the landfill stopped putting out methane gas, well, it wouldn't run. That's not going to happen, of course, but you get the idea. There's variabilities. It's like solar on a hot day. It doesn't work as well on the cold days. We factor those things in, but it's hard to say how much we're going to buy. But for comparison, in 2023, the 12-month average was $89 per megawatt hour that we were buying from that contract, and we forecast this one to be at or below that same amount. And if you saw the values there above, you can kind of see obviously why it's going to be less than what we averaged in 2023. So the recommendation is to authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Murray City for renewable energy beginning January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2027.
Oh,
I want to shed one additional detail on this item in front of you this evening. Over the years, the district has renewed this contract with Murray City in 2-year increments. And district code has a provision that the general manager, the utility director, and electric utility director can renew or negotiate energy procurement contracts up to 2 years. Anything beyond 2 years requires board review and board approval. And so in our negotiations with Murray City, their town council, their governing body has made a determination that they would like to retain more of that energy generation than they have in the past. And so through negotiations, we set a price for, as Jared pointed out in that slide, but they've also asked for a 3-year contract as opposed to 2 years. So that's why that's in front of you this evening. You haven't really seen this before as it pertains to Murray City. It's still continuing the same relationship, but instead of buying the energy in blocks, they're retaining more of it. And so it'll be similar to, a market procurement, but with them based on predetermined prices. So when they have energy available to be scheduled to us, we'll schedule it at these prices through UAMPS. We're just looking for board approval on a 3-year agreement as opposed to the 2-year agreements that have been happening through general manager approval.
So are those dates, 25 to 27, is that?
which it's 25, 26, and 27.
through 27,
Yeah.
okay, December is an important. Okay, very good, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for that succinct presentation. Do we have any customer
Right there.
comments? Do we have any public comments? I'm a little tired tonight. Do we have any public comments on this item? Seeing none. Do we have any board comments or questions on this item?
Jared, this methane gas, it keep producing for as long as that landfill's there?
Yep.
I mean, it just is there forever now.
Yes, yeah. And if you put food in any kind of carbon-based material, well, certainly if it's food at some point in time, it's going to want to off gas, and it will come out mostly as methane.
And it's underground anyway, I mean, and so, okay, methane gas, renewable power, and what do you think of those prices? Is it righteous or not? And also, do we have that we're with them now with a contract?
Yes, we're with them now. Yes.
December 31st.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it expires at the end of this year, so we just doing these, so we have it in advance. Yeah, yes, it's a good price. It's a good price. It's a great partnership we have with them. So it works well for both of us. I mean, the reality is, at the end of the day, we're going to have to go find more and more contracts to meet our energy needs, and always trying to reduce some of those market purchases that we were talking earlier about. Really, the goal is always to keep your rates stable. Preferably lower and greener to meet RPS, but stable is very important. This helps bolster that quite well.
What else? I had another question here, but, okay, now, can we buy power whenever we need it? Or they dictate to us when we can buy power?
It'll be more like them as a generator dictating that they chose, for lack of better words, they have some energy and you're going to sell it to Murray City, their utility there, like us, Public Power.
Yeah.
If their prices, values, their portfolio is full, then they'll sell to us, as opposed to the markets and the places. So
I heard you say that when they decide to sell it, and that means that we have to wait for them to call and say, hey, we got some power to sell.
essentially, yes.
Okay. But you shop every day with them also?
We're always shopping for more power constantly, so absolutely.
And they know we're here?
What's that?
They know we're here and we're using them?
Yes, yep.
The power, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
They're old friends of ours. You know, we've known them for a long time.
Oh,
as
good.
Brian mentioned, back to 2010. So, yeah, it's
yeah.
good friends.
You mean you and them?
District and them. I know them
okay,
recently.
okay.
Joe Horvath certainly knew them very well.
Oh, I see, okay. Because Murray City, I don't remember seeing that on there before for our renewable power.
It's always been titled in our power content label in our power presentations as the Trans-Jordan project.
Okay.
But it's Murray City is the entity that is the owner and operator of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
You guys?
I have no comments or questions. Do we have a motion?
I move staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Very good. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Finn?
Yes.
The record will note President Bender's absent.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Moving right along to item number 17, consideration of approval for procurement of a switchgear and control enclosure for the Martis Valley Substation Modernization Project in an amount not to exceed $2,267,893. Specifically. Keith again. Welcome back.
Thank you. This is action item number 17. The district's, was it on or is it on now?
In the red.
Gotcha. Okay, there we go. The district's Martis Valley Substation was commissioned in 1981. That substation is the district's only substation served by the 120,000 volt transmission system. All of our other substations are served by the 60 kV system. This substation specifically serves as a critical backup for our Donner Lake and Truckee substations and ensures redundancy and reliable system operation. This substation also serves critical infrastructure such as the Truckee-Tahoe Airport, the Truckee Sanitary District, the town's administrative building, as well as the Sierra Meadows neighborhood, West and East River Street corridors, the Truckee Crossroads Shopping Center, and the Coldstream development. And just for the board's viewing, here's a street view picture of Martis Valley Substation. And this slide shows generally the service area, normal service area of Martis Valley Substation, outlined there in red. Over the years, Martis Valley Substation has undergone some various improvements, such as protective relay upgrades, seismic anchoring of critical substation equipment like the big transformers you see out in the yard, as well as just general maintenance and periodic testing. The substation is indeed nearing the end of its service life and is the only remaining district substation that has not undergone a rebuild project. Beginning in 2021, staff began working with Qualis. Qualis, formerly known as Tri-Sage Engineering, has been the district's electric engineering consultant for quite some time. So staff has been working with them since 2021 to start working on a scope of work for modernizing the substation. That scope of work, I'm just going to name off the really big portions of work. There's many things that need to be done at the substation to modernize it, but the main, the big ticket items here are relocating the outdoor distribution bus, all of the bus tie switches, and the DC battery backup system to an indoor switchgear and control enclosure. In addition to that, replacing the 1980s vintage SF6 high voltage circuit switcher with a vacuum circuit breaker, upgrades to the SCADA system hardware, and improvements to the aging civil infrastructure, evaluating substation security, and make-ready work to accommodate a proposed battery energy storage system for that site. And we're actually preparing the site for any additional distribution feeders that may be needed in the future. So this slide here's got a lot going on. I'll try and high level it for you. This is kind of an overview of the existing substation and the equipment inside. On the left, you'll see the existing equipment, and everything in gray is intended to be removed. So that includes like I mentioned earlier, the circuit switcher and the outdoor bus, the tie switches, the existing control house, the battery backup system. And on the right side of the screen, you'll see the proposed layout of the substation. So the two main items here that I want to point out are the vacuum circuit breaker replacement and the switchgear and control enclosure. So high level, everything you see here on the right in gray gets shoved into this enclosure. So huge benefit. The scope of the substation modernization project ensures improved reliability, operability, SCADA, and just overall system visibility at the substation, maintainability. A lot of abilities there, but this project will ensure reliable operations of that substation for the next 40 years. So early in the scoping scoping and design process, staff identified that long lead times existed for the major substation equipment. Switchgear and control enclosure specifically has a current estimated lead time of 12 to 24 months. That's a wide window, but concerning either way, right? And I included these pictures here just to kind of give you an idea of what a switchgear and control enclosure looks like. This is an outside view and then an inside view. This is basically replacing all that outdoor equipment, switches, et cetera. Because of long lead times, staff identified the need to prioritize developing technical specifications for the long lead time equipment. On May 20th of this year, a bid for the switchgear and control enclosure was issued and published in the local paper. The original bid opening date of June 12th, 2024 was rescheduled multiple times due to bidder requests. The bid opening was finally held on July 11th. The table here that you see in front of you is just a summary of the bid opening. The district received 8 bids, of which 5 were determined to be administratively responsive at the bid opening. So the day we opened bids, we went through them. 5 of those bids were good to go, signed and everything. Staff and Qualis later performed a technical evaluation of the 5 responsive bids, and we identified that only 2 of the 5 responsive bids met all the technical specifications that were included with the bid documentation. Just want to note that staff did extend the bid period twice by issuing addenda. We provided 6.5 weeks for bidders to submit questions and/or exceptions for staff evaluation prior to the opening. And ultimately, staff found that Crown Technical Systems submitted the lowest responsive bid in the amount of $2,061,721. Fiscal impact. The district's electric capital budget for 24-25 allocates $2 million from capital reserves for the overall Martis Valley Substation Modernization Project in 2024. So $2 million in 2024. And additional funding in out years 25-26. So $5.725 million for the overall project has been budgeted. The procurement of the switchgear and control enclosure, in addition to the circuit breaker, which is the next item on tonight's agenda for board consideration, together are not expected to exceed $1.76 million in 2024. And I'd also like to point out that the procurement payment schedules that that were brought back through the bids process dictate that no more than 70% of the switchgear and control enclosure can be billed in 24 due to the manufacturer timeline. So overall, for the project in general, procurements, staff, engineering time, and engineering consulting services are estimated to be approximately $1.95 million in 2024, so under the $2 million budgeted for 24. And capital reserve funds currently have a sufficient balance of $10.8 million. However, due to delays in projects slated to be funded with the 22 electric debt proceeds, staff recommends funding this project with the 22 electric debt proceeds, which have a current balance of $6.9 million. This agenda item does not include any construction costs associated with the substation project. Just like to bring to the board's attention that staff does indeed intend to present a future agenda item for board consideration for construction contract award after the full design package has been completed and has been publicly bid. So staff's recommendation is to find 6 of the bids received and as presented by staff as non-responsive, and authorize the general manager to execute a material purchase contract with Crown Technical Systems for the purchase of 1 substation control enclosure in the amount of $2,061,721 plus a 10% contingency for a not to exceed purchase amount of $2,267,893. And I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Keith, for that. Do we have any public comment on this item, internets or otherwise? Seeing none, back to the board for our comments and questions.
First.
Yeah, we can shake up this order.
Tired
It's
of going
not,
first?
not set in stone.
No, pre-procurement is the wave of the future. I think this is a good step forward to be prepared for a future project coming up. So I don't have any other questions.
Keith,
Thank you.
this switch closure, switch gear control and closure thing, this will replace the substation we have now, because you said this one is on its last leg.
It won't replace the entire substation, but what it does is it takes a large portion of that substation and puts it in one piece of equipment.
A new piece.
So a lot less maintenance required, yes.
A new piece.
Yes, there's
Okay.
still portions of the substations that have been evaluated and they're still good. So we'll be reusing as much as possible.
Oh, yeah, okay. But we don't have to build any new buildings. That house that we just saw there, that enclosure, that's the way it's gonna look
Yes. Well, it'll look similar.
for 2
Might be a
million?
little bit bigger, might be a little bit smaller.
Okay, yeah, at $2 million and cents. Okay,
And some
thank you.
change, yes.
Very good.
A lot. I do have questions.
Oh, go for it.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. It is a high-ticket item. So once we procure this material, and then next step is to build it for the construction. And then once it's actually up and operational, I would expect that we're going to have like staff training to kind of monitor this new technology. Who is that going to be? Engineers, or is it going to be linemen, or is this? I'm curious about the staffing of it, and then also what kind of certifications will you need in order to run this type of piece of equipment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, two parts. In general, the theory of the operation is exactly the same as what we have now. It just looks a lot different. So, different types of relays, different manufacturers. So in parallel with the remainder of the design work that's required, we're also going to develop between engineering and operations, SOP, standard operating procedures for, what do we do if one of these circuits trips out? What if we have to do maintenance? So that will all be kind of developed in parallel to the design work. So when you commission the substation, we'll be good to go.
Okay, and then, so would it be say something happens and something at this new location goes out, who's on call to come?
It's the same.
It's the same.
Same as before, correct.
Okay, and it's no extra certifications or extra training
No.
in order to do it?
No.
Cool, okay. It looks a lot more complicated.
It
you
looks
know.
very
When you're going from this big to this little, it's like going from like a big Suburban to a little Toyota. And you just hope that it's not like a Lamborghini instead of a Toyota. But with if something goes wrong, the cost of maintaining it, that kind of stuff. So, I guess that's going to be down the line. But it's exciting to see it modernized.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Based on your analogy, it could be more efficient and easier to drive.
Drive itself.
It's an automatic, not a manual, right?
Yeah, and maybe you monitor it from home from a laptop or something.
One of the things to add to what Keith
Yes.
pointed out there is kind of, there's an unusually large number of bids that were found non-responsive due to technical specifications. And part of the reason for that is there's a benefit for this new modernized equipment being indoors in an enclosure, winter response, automated response. But also our engineering team put a very robust level of safety standards for this equipment, and not all of the bidders could meet those safety standards in their bid submittals. So I want to, commend the staff engineering for working on this project, but also safety is one of our core values, that the safety of those internal infrastructure placements, with particular respect to arc flash safety, was a primary concern in developing this project. So that's one of the reasons why there were so many non-responsive bids on that. They just couldn't meet our standards.
Okay, okay. Yeah, great. I very much appreciate the standard to which we have hardened our system and continue to make these improvements for, the betterment of our community. And so I have no questions. Do we have a motion?
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Do we have a second? Director Aguirre jumped in with the second. Why not? You're on fire tonight, Joe. Let's roll call vote, please.
Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Finn?
Yes.
The record will note President Bender is absent.
Okay. We are on.
Yeah, redevelopment if we don't get this new stuff.
No, we're going to do it. We're going to get the new staff and we're going to do it. It was our last action item of the evening. Item number 18, consideration of approval for procurement of a vacuum circuit breaker for the Martis Valley Substation Modernization Project in an amount not to exceed $310,897. So same substation, different equipment.
I'm here
Hit it.
still.
You are still here.
So
We appreciate you.
So just for the board's information, the background of this presentation is exactly the same. It's that other piece of equipment that I had indicated on this slide earlier. Let me get the laser pointer here just so it's clear. It's the circuit breaker. So again, another long lead item. So I'll skip straight to the analysis here. Again, we identified that the 145 kV class vacuum circuit breaker is another long lead item for the substation modernization project. Its lead times are similar to the SCE, switchgear control enclosure, 12 to 24 months. And we decided to prioritize getting that equipment here earlier than we would normally in the process. So on May 20th of this year, we issued a bid, and it was also published in the local paper for the vacuum circuit breaker. The bid opening was held on June 12th of this year, and we received one bid from Made in America Switchgear in the amount of $282,633. That bid was responsive both administratively at bid opening and technically. Same fiscal impact here. This is part of the overall Martis Valley Substation Modernization Project. Budgeted $2 million in 2024, $5.7 million overall for 24, 25, 26. The procurement of the circuit breaker, in addition to the switchgear and control enclosure, which the board just approved, together are not expected to exceed $1.76 million in 2024. The overall project costs associated with the Martis Valley Substation Modernization Project are not expected to exceed $1.95 million in 2024. And like the switchgear control enclosure, we have sufficient funding in capital reserves to fund the project, but due to delays in the 22 electric debt proceed projects, we are recommending to fund this procurement from the 22 electric debt proceeds as well. It has a current balance of $6.9 million. And again, this agenda item does not include any of the construction costs associated with the overall modernization project for the substation, and we will present that at a later time to the board for board consideration. So staff's recommendation here is to authorize the general manager to execute a material purchase contract with Made in America Switchgear for the purchase of one 145 kV class vacuum circuit breaker in the amount of $282,633 plus a 10% contingency for a not to exceed purchase amount of $310,897.
So this project is going to cost us $1 million.
Between the two of them, between these two items, yeah, a little over $2.5 million.
Close.
Thank you, Keith. Any public comments on this item? Nope, on the internets, nope. Back to us. Any comments, questions from the board? We
I'll
can
move
start in
staff's
any
recommendation.
direction. Great.
I'll
We have a
second.
motion. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Aguirre?
Yes,
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
we need that new equipment.
Vice
We gotta
President
get it.
Finn?
Yes.
The record will note President Bender's absent.
Okay, to routine business, we can bang this out. Consideration to approve the treasurer's report. Any public comment on the treasurer's report?
Thanks,
Seeing
Keith.
none.
I'm just thanking Keith.
Oh, thank you, Keith. Sorry. You're already back in your seat. I'm like, routine business. Treasurer's report. No public comments. Any board comments, any motions?
Move we approve the report.
I'll second.
Okay. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Finn?
Yes.
The record will note President Bender's absent.
Okay. And last but not least, consideration to approve the July 17th, 2024 minutes. Do we have any public comment on the minutes? No? Okay, great.
I have one quick
Board?
question. Brian, I know we approved the change in the district code. When can we expect to see it reflected online?
We should have that done very quickly here. We've been a little bit short-staffed on a couple of items related to that, having the resolutions signed by the board president, and then getting those implemented. Our staff and retirees should expect that implemented very quickly.
Thank you very much. I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Director Aguirre?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Finn?
Yes.
The record will note President Bender's absent.
Okay, great. Thank you all. This brings us into our closed session items. Am I forgetting something specific aside from, can we take a 5-minute break to stretch and then we'll go into closed session?
We'll go into closed session on the 3 items as listed on the agenda as items 21, 22, and 23.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. All right. Good night to those who are having a good night now.